This is Talking to America. I'm your host, Aaron Zelman. Our guest today is Len Savage. Len has been with us before on several occasions. Len is going to be telling us about an experience he had in Milwaukee in a federal courtroom dealing with an unusual case, U.S. versus Olafson. The outcome of it, if it is left unchallenged, could destroy the ownership of semi-automatic firearms in America. Am I right about that?
Oh, you're correct. And not just semi-automatic firearms, but side-by-side shotguns are now suspect.
Would you like to elaborate?
It might be better if we go back to the beginning and kind of explain how this came to be. It's my understanding Mr. Olafson is an avid shooter. He's a member of the National Guard, and he's a drill sergeant, a drill instructor. He teaches people how to shoot firearms. And a gentleman, about 19, 20 years old, came up to him and says, hey, I understand you like to shoot and you know how to shoot. Can you teach me how to shoot? Well, Mr. Olafson takes the man to the range and starts to teach him how to shoot an AR-15 properly, holding it properly, slide acquisition, the whole 9 yards. And the kid from time to time would ask to borrow the AR and go to the public range and practice his shooting skills. And Mr. Olafson was nice enough to accommodate him and say, sure, don't do anything stupid with this. If you're just going to the range and back, obey all the range rules, on and on. And the third time that this kid borrowed the rifle, and I keep calling him a kid, but remember, he's over 18. It was lawful for him to possess the firearm. And he's at the range, and he fires about 120 rounds. He said the barrel was kind of hot. And he went to put another magazine in and shoot again, and the gun shot 3 times and then jammed. That's what he said. I was there. I heard him. And at the range was a couple of police officers, and immediately, where'd you get this gun? This gun's a machine gun. And the kid says, it ain't mine. I got it from Mr. Olafson. And that's where this starts. Because Mr. Olafson, being a responsible person, heard what had happened, went down to the police station that had the firearm and says, look, guys, I can explain all of this because that's not a machine gun. If anything, it may have broke or maybe it was too hot. He goes, but I can assure you that gun's not a machine gun. I'm in the National Guard. I know what a machine gun looks like, and that's not it. And didn't matter. 3 days later, the ATF busted down the doors in his house and held his family at gunpoint. He's indicted. Not for possession of a machine gun, because Mr. Olafson never possessed it. He was indicted for illegal transfer of a machine gun because he let the kid borrow his rifle and go to the range, and the gun malfunctioned. So that's where this begins. But it gets worse. ATF, local office, gets the gun, sends it to Tech Branch and say, look, we suspect this as being a machine gun. Tech Branch examines it, notes the year, make, and model, noted that it had some M16 components, such as a trigger and disconnector and hammer, but noted when they test fired it, it fired as a semi-automatic. So it was a firearm under the 18th chapter of the United States Code, but basically lawful to possess. And the ATF local agent says, look, we have, verifiable witnesses. We have 2 cops who saw this thing fired in the automatic mode. Could you retest this gun again, this time using soft-primered, commercially available ammunition? And a month later, FTB, since they don't have any written testing standards, sure. And they put soft-primered ammunition, and they were able to get the gun to malfunction. Not all the time, and even they admit not all the time. But because they were able to get it to malfunction, it was a gun which shoots more than once per function of the trigger. He's guilty. Indict him. So it begins. And Mr. Olafson, when he attempted to go to trial, I think they had a pretrial conference last Thursday. And the ATF, through the government, said that they didn't want me testifying there and that I was there just to provide wholesale attack against the ATF and not give anything of substance to the court or to the jury or to Mr. Olafson's defense. That really doesn't surprise me, but that's what happened. And this Monday, the trial began.
Why don't you describe what went on in that courtroom? I think people will be fascinated, especially people who believe that they want their day in court and that there is justice left in the justice system.
Well, the first thing that happened Monday morning, this was prior to them selecting a jury, was a holdover from that last Thursday's pretrial conference. And one of the things that was brought up at this pretrial conference was that we know that the government has evidence of Mr. Olafson's innocence. And through discovery, they're required to provide the defense with this, what they term exculpatory information, because the government knows that Mr. Olafson is innocent, and there's a couple of reasons that the government knows that Mr. Olafson is innocent. Because at the same time, they were prosecuting Mr. Olafson for illegal transfer of a machine gun. They said it was because it contained the M16 trigger parts. But what they refused to show the judge was that SGW Olympic Arms, prior to 1986, made all AR-15 semi-automatic rifles with M16 trigger parts. And that the government in 1986 recognized that there was a possibility of a malfunctioning occurring with certain ammunition, depending on the wear of the gun, fouling, and that the guns could go full auto without the user knowing it, and they posed a safety hazard, and that the ATF mandated Olympic Arms to recall all of these guns and modify the trigger components so that this malfunction couldn't happen. We asked the government to produce this evidence so that the judge and the jury could see it. Mr. Olafson's attorneys asked for it, and the ATF Chief Counsel's Office responded to the U.S. Attorney's Office and said that it contained tax information, therefore it would be against the law for the judge to even view the document, and that His Honor would have to take the ATF Chief Counsel's Office at their word that it contained no exculpatory information. So there was nothing fair about it. On top of that, during the same time, they removed an AR-15 with M16 components from the NFRTR, or the NFA registry, the government's bound book of machine guns. And they contacted its owner and put in writing that an AR-15 with M16 components is not a machine gun, therefore it should have never been registered. We're removing it from the registry. The seer is the machine gun. I'm not trying to confuse anybody here, but think about this for a minute. At the very same moment in time, one man is getting indicted for possessing an AR-15 with M16 components that malfunctioned. Another man's $20,000 property is being devalued and saying, well, no, that's not a machine gun, so it's no longer on the registry. We don't recognize it. Sorry, you're just out. And FTB and the personnel involved in this case were involved in both situations. I know, because the person who owned that gun asked me who to talk to, and I directed him to the personnel involved in this case. I wasn't involved in the case at the time.
Okay, Len, before we forget, can we go back just a second and talk about the tax issue here? It seems that there was some misinformation given to the court dealing with the evidence.